We're going to do a sample of a single welt or jetted pocket for the back of pants. For the purposes of this tutorial, I'm not going to do it with a dart in. Typically in the back of pants, this pocket will go through a dart, but we're just not going to show that today, just to make it easy for you. And I recommend that you do a sample without a dart to start with, just so you understand it. So this is the back of the pants here. And on the wrong side, I have a piece of pretty good interfacing fused to it. So this is Shape Flex. I like using Shape Flex. And then this is my welt piece, which is also fully interfaced with Shape Flex. The position of the welt, you'll mark on both this piece and on this piece. But for the purposes of today, I'm just going to mark it onto this piece and then we'll align it with this one. It's really important that this part is done very, very neatly. So you're going to draw in your rectangle for your welt onto your piece really neatly, making sure that it's nice and straight. So this one, I guess I'll do about that wide. So these lines have to be very parallel. If they are not parallel, it's going to be hard to sew it neatly. Okay, you'll notice that this is kind of at the top of my piece, my welt piece. Okay, so this needs to align in about the middle of this piece, but on the right side. So I'm just going to basically kind of move this over and flip over and then center this piece here. Okay, and that's the position of the welt. Now I'm going to just put a pin in it and just double check that that's where I want it to be. Just placing the pin holes through the back here, just on those corners. Okay, and then I'll check on here that it's nice and centered in that piece. Okay, if I had marked it onto here, I would just do the same in reverse and just mark it on. So we can now transfer those markings to the back. Okay, here we are. Now, we're going to shorten our stitch length to about 1.5. It's really important that you do this because the precision of this next step is what will determine how good your welt is to finish with. So, I'm going to start right in that corner. Really as precisely as I can. So I'm going to use the hand wheel to really go down there, back tack, and then sew right along that line as well as I possibly can. Precisely to the end, and back tack. Can you see how absolutely dead on that line I am? So again here, to start it off, really small stitch length. Okay, so Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press this down like this, and I'm going to press this up like this, really making sure it's like fully open, and that will help the next step a lot. This method of sewing a welt pocket is known as a window, and you'll see why in just a second. There are many different ways to sew these kinds of welt or jetted pockets, and you should do the way that makes the most sense to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a hole in, and I know this sounds very scary, but I'm going to cut in. I'm just going to show you how I'm going to cut. I'm going to cut like this, okay, with these kind of big ears through all of the layers. Make sure your triangle is more of, I guess, closer to an isosceles triangle, I guess. And you're going to cut deeply into that corner, right to where that stitching line is, okay? Be brave, but not, I don't know, too enthusiastic, I suppose. This is why we use that small stitch length, just so that we can really get into there. And because it's interfaced, it's going to be pretty stable, even if your fabric is a tiny bit of a looser weave. You can see I'm right in that corner, okay? So now I'm going to flip this through, just tuck it through like you're posting a letter. All of that goes through. And I think you should start to see why it's called the window method. Okay. Now, what I like to do at this point is I like to understitch this part here and understitch this part here. So this is where we're sewing the seam allowance to this part of the welt. I'm going to start a little bit before this line and start a little bit after that line of stitching and finish a little bit before. I can go to a normal stitch length now. I'm going to go just over 2. Okay, same here. So here it is turned through. Now, if you have, see how I have these really sharp corners here? If you have a pucker, like something like that, what that means is that you did not cut deeply enough into this corner. And so what I would do is I would just turn it back through and ensure that you're clipping all the way into that corner. Okay, so we've got our window here. Now what I would do is just understitch. Oops, I'm going to go from the other side, from the wrong side. So on the wrong side, you have this kind of facing situation happening. Is we're just going to understitch this seam allowance to the top edge of the welt, using just a normal length stitch length, like a 2.5. Okay, welcome to my slightly dirty ironing board. So I'm going to press this now. So I'm going to do it from this wrong side to start with, and I'm just going to start by pressing in this fold where I understitched. So that will give me a really good way to press that. Just doing just that top edge, and then I'm going to flip it to the right side and press the rest. Now you want to make sure at this point that you are getting the best possible box you can. Notice how I'm giving it a lot of steam and I'm not moving the iron around. Just making sure that these corners are not puckered at all. And if they are, I can just give them a little wiggle like this. Making sure they press flat. Okay, double check from the other side. Oh, I can see there's a little pucker here, but it's okay. It's not actually a fold. It's just kind of pleating the facing, so I can just maybe press it a little bit from this side a little bit. That should help things. There we go. Okay, so we have this piece in. Now what we're going to do is we're going to fold this up here and then fold it down, if that makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to show you from the right side because I think that's all what will make it make sense. And then that's our welt there. Okay, so we have this, and essentially from this side, we're going to just push it up like this. Okay, you can open that out even if you want. Okay, press this in. Okay, now fold it down so that it perfectly matches that top edge. Okay, there's still a bit of steam in my fabric, which makes it easier to kind of finger press so I can double check that it's looking beautiful. Then I'll give that a hit it with a lot of steam. I want to make sure that there's no holes, like gaps. I want to make sure that there's nothing kind of overlapping too much, but that looks pretty good to me. Okay, it's looking pretty good. So we've got our kind of welt pocket here. And what we want to do is we want to secure it because it's just kind of flapping around loose. So the first thing we're going to do is just fold open this section here. And you can see these little ears that we had cut before, and there's a really nice crease mark in there. We're going to sew right along that. So we're essentially finishing that rectangle that we sewed, but this pleat is in it for the welt. I'll show you again. It's all sitting nicely for the welt. I'm going to neatly pull this back. You can put a pin in it if you want. Okay, I'm going to neatly stitch right along this crease line, catching both of these ears and this pleat in place. Okay, let's do the other side. Oh, I forgot, you should use a shorter stitch length for this again. Okay. So folding it back on itself. You can see this ear has just stuck to the interfacing, so I'm just going to encourage that over. Okay. So everything's sitting nice and flat. If you go too far like this, you will introduce a pucker. So you need to make sure you're really precise. Okay, looking pretty good. Okay, at this point, this is, I guess, the point of no return in terms of it being secured. So really make sure that things are good at this point. Let's have a look at the wrong side. Looking pretty nice. Okay, all of this is nice and neat. This is pressed open underneath here. At this point, you can cut off, you can trim back the ears just to reduce a bit of bulk. Just trim one of them. I always like to trim the inner one. Okay, so looks good from the outside, but there's no pocket. Okay, it's like a pocket to nowhere. So now we need to create our pocket bag. So I'll be back with another piece of fabric to help you with that. Okay, so now we need to make our pocket. So we have this part hanging down here. We're going to need to add a pocket bag to it. So this would generally be lining fabric. I'm just using this one because it's what I have. I'm just going to sew it onto here with a seam. Oops, still using a really short stitch length, but I don't need to. There we go. Okay. And then the same at the top, because we will want to catch this pocket into the waistband. If you don't do that and you put things in your pockets, what's going to happen is it's going to drag open your pocket like this. And I think we've all seen that. We don't like that. So we need to support the pocket bag by attaching it into the waistband or the waist seam somehow. So I'm going to just put this part here. Again, this would be lining. If you were thinking ahead, you could have extended this all the way up, but that can be a little bit bulky. So I'm just going to sew that in place. I'm just going to neatly grade this. Okay, and I'm going to give it a press. Okay, so still building it, but we still actually don't have a pocket. Okay, so now we have to put the other side of the pocket in. Now you can use something fun like Australian ice creams or you can use lining fabric. Oh, that needs a bit of a press, but it'll be okay. It is up to you. If I do use a fun fabric, then I think it can be fun to have the like print on the inside of your pants, so it makes you happy every time you open your pants. But it is up to you. It could be a plain fabric. But either way, even if it is plain fabric, once I stitch this on, when I go to open my pocket, I will see something I don't want to see, just like blank fabric, or you could flip this around like this. So it's ugly on the inside, but then when you open your pocket, you can see that. That's fun. The alternative is to sew on a little facing of the face fabric. So I prefer to do it like this, where I would finish these edges and like on the overlocker, or just even with pinking shears, just to just have it as a very smooth, so it's not adding bulk. You could actually, what would probably be the best would be to bind the edges and then just sew it down on there flat, so we're not introducing another seam basically. And then that is going to sit behind here, you can see like this, so that when you open the pocket, you see the same as the face fabric. So I'm going to do that method. So I'm just going to sew it on here. Better make sure I have enough pocket. So there we go. I like to cut my pocket bags a bit long and then trim them, but obviously if you're making a pattern, then you will do this precisely. Okay. So now we're going to just align this to make sure that when you open the pocket, you will actually see this kind of facing here. So it's not going to align with this. And in fact, we don't want it to align because we want all of our bulk to be spread out evenly like this. Oops. And then I'm going to trim this to be the same length as the pocket bag. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew them together. So I don't want to see this stitching on the outside, so I'm going to pin it in place, just these layers, using pretty small seam allowance, like 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch. Okay, all the way around. I always round these corners. So it's easier to sew, and so it's easier to finish. Just pin it in place first. Oops. So again here, I'm grabbing this. Okay, gonna round these corners. Not a very good one, that one, but I'm sure you get the idea. Make sure everything's sitting nice and flat. Okay, you can trim this off at the top. Okay, so now I'm just going to sew this together, the pocket bags together, folding the backs out of the way. Okay, folding it out of the way, just sewing the pocket bags. Okay, let's see how we did. Okay, this is the inside. You will finish this edge, obviously, nicely. This is the outside. We don't see any of that stitching that we just did, but we do have a pocket that when you open the pocket, you can't see the lining. It functions as a pocket. So anyway, that is the window method for sewing a single welt pocket. Hope that helped.